This episode of Pick Up the Six podcast is brought to you by our friends at Mud Gear. We have an awesome new partnership to tell you about, and we love Mud Gear because they're made tougher. Just like you guys, it's outdoor gear for the outdoor athlete. You can get it dirty, you can sweat in it, it's all good, and I absolutely love it. If you go to my Instagram, you'll see me rocking Mud Gear shirts and shorts on that Blue Ridge relay, and it performed really, really well. We've got a great deal going for our listeners. You go to mudgear.com, you use the code PUT6, that's the number 6, PUT and the number 6, and you're saving 15% off today. Great shirts, great shorts, awesome socks. They've got a bunch of different kinds of socks. They've got full knee-high socks for compression. They've got running socks. They've got mountain biking socks. They've got rucking socks. It's all good. Go pick it up today. It's made tougher. It's Mud Gear, and it's 15% off at mudgear.com using the code PUT6. Go get after it, pick up some of their stuff, and help support a great company that we love to partner with. After her firefighter husband suffers after a life-changing blaze, trauma therapist Karen Williams discovers the limits of her professional experience and must face her own fears by trying to save her marriage. That's the story of a new film called First Responders. The film's writer and producer, Rick Eldridge, joins the show to talk about the project and how they've created a movie dedicated to protect, serve, and sacrifice. This is Pick Up the Six podcast. Rick, a good morning to you, and welcome to the show, man.
Morning. Good to be here.
Excited to do this, to get to meet you, to hear about this new project. A friend of mine called me a few weeks ago and said, man, I got a great guest you got to interview. Totally fits with Pick Up the Six. And he was telling me about this new film, First Responders, and really sort of dedicated to those who just, man, put so much on the line. And I thought, oh yeah, Pick Up the Six audience will thoroughly enjoy this topic. So man, just thanks for being here.
Great. Well, glad to do it. It's fun time.
Yeah, it is. The movie is in theaters today and tomorrow, right? So we're recording on October 24th. So it's got a short run here in some theaters, and then it's going to be available on streaming platforms after that. So we'll talk a little bit more about just all of that. And coincidentally, the 28th of this week, right? So the end of this week is National First Responders Day. So The timing is good, my friend. But you've got, man, 35 plus years in the entertainment business. We were just chatting. A friend of mine, fraternity brother, Robert Jones Black, also known as Bobby Jones, right? Great grandfather's Bobby Jones. You were part of a movie around Bobby Jones as well. So just tell me a little bit about Rick and your life and this experience.
It's been great. Yeah. The Bobby Jones Stroke of Genius was my very first movie I did on my own with my company. A lot of my years previous to that were with studios. I had a company that was contracted to Universal and Disney and did projects for them, and sold the company and started doing my own thing. And that was a fun project. I'm kind of a golf nut too, so it didn't hurt that we got to start with that, and it's been a great film that's continued on and really about 31 feature films, as well as a lot of other animated and those kind of things as well. It's been a fun project to be involved with, and it's telling stories is what it's all about for me, and I want to tell stories that really have a purpose. You got to entertain at the highest level, I think, but then beyond that, you're able to do things that can inspire, that can affect change, that can cause you to think deeply maybe about things, and that's a little bit about what First Responders is. It's looking a little further at some of the things that we take for granted of these men and women that do so much for us.
Purpose-driven stories, man. I'm a huge fan of it. I'm a believer that regardless of your product, I'd rather talk about the people and the purpose that make it happen. And it sounds like that's what you're doing with your films. Another one, right, to try to impact some change, running the Sahara. We've had Charlie Engle on this show before, who was physically running that Sahara. So we've got a couple of small world connections going here, Rick.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we try to do with every film that we make is have a charitable component, and that film was right down the line of that. Of course, Matt Damon produced it with us. Matt narrated the film, and it was all about creating awareness with the water issues in Africa, and creating money to dig wells and do things to support that. And it really came out of Matt actually doing a film in Africa and seeing the need and then wanting to reach out some way and meet it. And we, at the same time, were introduced to Charlie and a couple of the other guys that were part of the film. And it's like, wow, let's run across the Sahara Desert and film it. What a crazy thing.
Yeah.
And but it was really a unique experience and a lot of fun to do that.
Did you know you always wanted to be sort of in this space, a filmmaker, a storyteller? What's the genesis of that?
Well, I started my first degrees in music, and so I toured and played for years and did that, and but I had a degree in music, so I happened to be in a studio doing a session with a symphony on a piece that I had written, and the engineer at the studio said, "Rick, have you ever thought about scoring film?" I think, well, I'd love to do that. I've never done that before. And that was a guy that was working with Hart Corporation of Ivanovich, which is at the time one of the biggest educational publishers. And they had a film called Kingdom of the Dinosaurs, which was at the time, this was before Jurassic Park, so it's been a while. But it was an animated film about evolution and about history and all that kind of stuff. And it became a PBS special and then an educational thing that of course followed their distribution model. But the film won some awards and did okay. The score won an award. And the next call I got was from Disney saying, "Hey, we're building the studio in Orlando, and would you be interested in being a part of it?" And so that really just opened doors for me. And so, I got on the back lot of both Disney and Universal, first doing, audio, sound design, music, post-production, and then through the process evolved into writing my own scripts. And I'll tell people now, I used to write stories that were 3 minutes long and we call them songs.
Yeah.
Now I write stories that are 2 hours long and we call them movies.
Yeah.
But still telling stories. So it just kind of evolved over the course of time.
What for you, and this is a large subject, and it can probably go in a different direction, but someone even asked me the other day, had the pleasure of being a guest on a podcast, and he said, what to you is the key to a good story? So I'd ask you the same thing, Rick, before we talk about first responders, because I'm excited to hear more about it. But just from where you sit, and you've been able to tell stories from a lot of different angles, but there probably are some commonalities throughout those.
I think the most important thing is you've got to fall in love with your characters, or at least care about your characters and what's going to happen to them, because that drives story. Character drives story, I think. And I have this first 5 minute rule where in the first 5 minutes of the movie, you need to identify and care about who these characters are and where they're going and what they're doing. And so that's I think a critical piece of it. And then I think telling the story at the highest degree of excellence for film involves a lot of technical things too. But the whole process, I think, is it begins with people, it begins with story, and people connecting with that.
What does it for you? Like what's Rick like to watch? What movies, right, move you from that storytelling standpoint?
I love a lot of different genres, but I think if I was going to target one thing, I really love biopics, stories that where you can really get deeper into the lives of people and where they what made them tick, what caused them to do whether it's an athlete, whatever it is. I think that's something for me. I really enjoy knowing that and understanding the path that people take to get to wherever it is they're going.
As you're telling me that, and you're talking about sort of the keys to a good story and learning about them, it's all fictional, but the way in which, I'm a big Star Wars guy, the way in which I believe George Lucas biopicked those characters that he created out of thin air, the moment that Darth Vader walks on the screen, you're like, you never get to see his face. Who is this guy? What is this? The moment you meet that, optimistic Luke Skywalker, sort of look into the horizon, you're like, I want to know more about this kid. And I think that's something that he did extremely well and leveraged technology that we had never seen before.
That's right. And I love science fiction too. So you hit on an area. Again, all genres are great, but we've always focused on, my wife and I, science fiction type stuff, because we just kind of love that. And it's kind of you're venturing into the unknown, and you're right. I think those characters you just endeared yourself to. You from beginning with Luke Skywalker
Mhm.
and all that happened in that series.
Yeah.
A very, very successful series because of that, I think. Yeah.
How much have you seen your industry change from a technology standpoint, from the way in which you can tell stories? The interesting thing is, though, there are still just such classic elements that even with the best CGI and even with the best technology, some of those things stay true. But I think about, we have two young girls, so they were absolutely enthralled by Disney. Did this behind the scenes documentary of Frozen 2, and they
Right.
showed you everything that went into it, how it almost fell off the tracks. Now, they didn't even really have an ending, and they sort of figured it out as they went, which I thought was crazy, but it was
Right.
really pretty neat the way it came together. But I think about your experience at Disney, and I'm like, there are 1,000 moving parts that go
Oh
into
yeah.
pulling something like that off.
Really, really are. And technology has certainly been our friend in that regard. I mean, what used to take, many, many, many more months
Mm.
and many more millions of dollars, we can do and make it much more approachable. And I think one of the things, I do a lot of educational work in schools, and one of the things that when I started that I did not have as much as people today have is the access to technology to be able to tell story digitally with an iPhone and a laptop.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
pretty amazing. And story is story. It's easy to get engaged in story, and in many ways and not that I like this, but the story becomes more important than the technology,
Mm.
and you tend to even if it's not George Lucas making $100 million movie, you're still saying, boy, I want to see what happened to the story. I want to see what happens. And that's how you can do that on an iPhone.
Yeah.
And so it's neat because I think storytellers from younger to us today have so many more resources available to us. When we started, we mentioned Bobby Jones early on. That was 35 millimeter film, which we couldn't even see what we were shooting. We had to go send it out to a lab to get it processed.
Wow.
And a couple of days later, we got
Yeah.
it back, and then we got
Yeah.
to look at it. And it's like, oh, that didn't work too good. Let's do it again. So, I mean, it was so much more difficult than it is today, where we're instantly we can see what we shot.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It adds to it for sure. He's Rick
Yeah.
Eldridge. The new movie is First Responders, out today. It's got a few day run here in theaters. And what's really cool is if you go to firstrespondersmovie.com, and if you guys listen in real time when we drop the episode today, or even tomorrow, the 25th, you can put your zip code in there. You can find some theaters that have it and go check it out in theater. They're also going to be streaming it as well. So tell me about the genesis of this project. And it's just the trailer alone is intense, right? And
Yeah.
you can feel the
Yeah.
emotion of these characters. So tell me how this
Well,
thing got going.
we had a had a great time making the movie, but the way the movie came about, we were actually on set working on a film right after COVID. We actually had a film called The Mulligan, which started and got stopped because of COVID,
Wow.
and then we kicked back into gear a year later with a lot of other protocols in place. And so we're sitting around talking about what's going on and what's changed in our culture and in our world, and really what had become a cancel culture in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And people talking about defunding the very people that keep us safe and protect us and sacrifice themselves for us. And we said somebody ought to tell that story. And as we talked about it, we said, well, maybe we should tell that story. And so this became kind of a project that we really all got involved in and did as really a something that was a personal project that we wanted to do. I immediately looked at First Responder Day, and then this week which is First Responder Week, basically. 28th is the day where traditionally we've always acknowledged these guys, and a lot of corporations will give away a free meal or whatever you want to do for first responders. But it's First Responder Week, so I called Fathom Events. I felt like this was more of an event-oriented movie. A lot of times people ask, why don't you play it for the next 3 weeks? Well, I thought this was something that needed to be pointed to this week and be basically a destination type film. So it's playing Monday night, Tuesday night, the 24th, 25th, and it's First Responder Week. But I called the distributor and I said, put a pin in these dates. I'll tell you what we're doing later. And so I've had some good success with Fathom Events, and so they trusted me. They put a pin in the dates, and then here we are today. This is opening day, I guess, as we're talking, and this week it'll be playing. And then because it is First Responder Week, we wanted to immediately get it to an audience that maybe didn't go to a theater. So it will be streaming on the 28th. PureFlix has an exclusive streaming on it, and then after that, it'll hit all the other platforms too, like Amazon and whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's a story that basically humanizes these men and women and helps you understand a little more the things they deal with, on a day-to-day basis. We just had a hurricane in Florida where I live, and everybody's evacuating and running out of the state, and these guys are going the other way.
That's right.
They're going to be a part of the solution, part of whatever it takes to keep people safe. And so that's in every case where these guys are. So that story not only is a sacrifice of them, but their families and all are all part of that. So we wanted to tell that story. So you'll see some family connectivity, and you'll see some of the things that are even byproducts of their job. We deal with a very heavy subject matter called PTSD, which a few years ago, nobody even wanted to talk about because, that might be a sign of weakness. We can't talk about that stuff. But how can you not, run into a building and see what you see, and or come up on a crash and see what you see, and just turn that off in your head when you go home? Yeah. It becomes, and we show that we have this principal character, the fireman who does that very thing and has to carry a young boy out of a fire just charred, and he can't get that out of his head. And we see the struggle in the course of the movie, where he's having nightmares, he's not able to work, he can't get this out of his head, and even to the point that he says, if this is what this is all about, I'm not sure I even want to live. At a point where his wife just has nowhere else to turn, and we see her, who's a counselor herself and is dealing with these kind of issues, saying, God, we can't do this anymore. We need your help. So even calling to a higher power to say, we need help. But, we did this and we worked very closely with first responders, especially in some of the fire sequences, the police sequences. What we didn't want to do is kind of, assume the way things happen, like some things we see, and get made fun of later or discredited, because that's not the way we do stuff. We worked alongside of first responders to make sure that you mentioned the opening sequence or the trailer is intense. It is. And we had 16 cameras at all kinds of different angles capturing this big opening fire sequence that we did. Pretty phenomenal technically, but we had 25 firemen, actual men that were working that with us, to talk technically about how things were done, and then physically to be extras in the movie and do those things that we didn't want our actors doing. So it was great to work alongside of them, and and actually have the guys that professionally know how to do what they do that, and we learned so much in the process too. One of the things that Fathom allows us to do, which I really like, is once we do the dramatic feature, we have a kind of an afterglow or afterthought where we have about 10 or 15 minutes of real professionals in their fields, police, fire, EMT, telling their stories and really validating what we've just seen, in many ways. Because a lot of times you'd see that and say, wow, that doesn't really happen, does it? But yeah, these guys have some very emotional personal stories, which really touched me, and so fantastic that we can see those and then begin to again validate the stories we've just seen, and really feel for what these guys are doing, the sacrifices they and their families make for our safety, for our security.
Yeah, you think about there just are countless men and women, and I'm just so grateful that you guys have put this together, have felt so moved. I believe a higher power interceded to get a project like this created. And, you think about, and we've done a lot here on this show, and I'm just grateful for our audience for caring so much about it, is, we expect soldiers to go to war and go fight battles And
Yeah.
you know they're going to be asked to do things that are sometimes horrific and things that many of us couldn't stomach, and we're grateful for that. The same is said for those who step foot out of their house every day and might not return, right? And their
Right.
family members have to deal with that, right? You know, you think about the cop or the first responder, the firefighter, like they're putting themselves in harm's way.
Right.
They're volunteering to do it. Yes, they get paid and it's a job, but you know nobody's forced into that line of service. And so
Yeah.
to create a film like this to highlight that, I think is needed now more than ever, because I think it gives us some perspective.
Yeah.
And our hope, and the reason why we share the stories here that we do, is that you can just think about those heroes that you'll never meet, you'll never know their name, but they're out there every day doing it.
That's right.
Outside of the learning more about sort of first responders, what actually goes into the physical work, right? Fighting a fire, I'm sure you learned a lot about. What did you
Yeah.
learn about how they conduct themselves in their personal lives, what the camaraderie like, what that brother and sisterhood is like inside those places of work, the firehouse, right? The
Yeah.
EMS station. What'd you learn about that?
Well, you know, we tried to create that because the movie actually opens up in a bowling alley. And so we've got police, fire, rescue, all,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they have their league and they're bowling against each other. So they're razzing each other, having fun, getting together. But you do sense that there's a respect for them. There is a camaraderie among what they do, because in many ways, you know, even though they're different professions, they're making the same sacrifice.
Yeah.
And so it very much that, you know, these you know, especially in the area of fire and EMT, I mean, those guys literally live together a lot of their life and share life together. And so the camaraderie there is strong. It's powerful. And but we see that across all of the different professions. And we wanted to come up with a device that would express that. And I forget who it was that said, let's do the bowling alley. I said, that's a great idea. You know, just to having fun, enjoying life. And you know, they have this little trophy that they pass around with whoever wins the wins the night. And so, yeah, it was a fun piece of what we did. And, you know, and I think portraying that is I mean, the main thing is, you know, we look at these guys almost with a threat in a lot of ways, especially if it's a policeman that, you know, that might pull us over for going
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes, 5 miles over, or whatever it happens to be. And so it's maybe sometimes hard to really understand and have empathy, you know, because we feel, you know, we may be afraid, I don't know,
Yeah.
or maybe just a little intense about the connection. But and that's why I use the term humanized. These are real men and women that have a heart, that have a life, that have a family, just like all of us do. They just happen to be in a profession that really requires some very unique and special things and abilities from them, and the way that they look at their work, and also much sacrifice. So I hope that people will, you know, learn that, and the course of watching the movie will understand that, will have some empathy for that, and we learn so much just doing the film and seeing how these guys go about doing what they do. You know, even something as simple as, you know, how do you walk up onto a car that's on the side of the road, you know, to make an inquiry. You know, there's a right way to do that gives you a little sense of protection. I never thought about that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But being alongside of these guys as we did it, we just learned so much. But it was a
How
lot of
many,
fun.
some good mustaches walking around the set, I would think.
Yeah.
Probably has some fun with that. Who in the film is going to steal their heart, right? When they go watch this thing, who are they going to connect with?
Well, I think they'll certainly connect with, you know, Mark's wife, Karen, because she's someone that is like a third generation responder, and we hear that through the course of
Mm-hmm.
the story. And she's kind of the glue, if you will,
Mm.
because you know, we have an incident that happens with the policeman. We have an incident that happens with the police woman's husband, who is an EMT, and he's trying to take care of the family in the home while she's in a hospital. I won't give away the story of what
Sure.
happens.
Sure.
But and then, you know, Karen, who was actually a dispatcher herself, and then decided I can't do this anymore. You know, I've now married a fireman. I don't want to send him into harm's way and me have to worry about that while I'm sitting here trying to do my job. She goes back to college, this is backstory stuff, but she becomes a counselor and begins working with people that have dealt with these issues. and she has such a special sense of knowledge because generationally she's been a part of that. So these are some of the conversations we had as we were building these characters. But Karen, I think, is the glue with each and every one of these people and connects at a certain level with each and every one. And even at some point where she has to cry out to God for help personally, we see that she's the character arc that really takes us through each of these stories. So yeah, I think that's the one character. Although I think you'll identify with each one in their own way. But yeah, definitely Karen.
It'll be a lump in throat, right? Probably a box of tissues with you to wipe the eyes a few times, but well worth investing some time to not only see what's going to be a great, powerful film, but also I think to Rick's point, to lean in on some of that intentionality, some of the gratitude, right? Some of the thankfulness, and to your, again, to learn who some of these people are, right? We often see just a uniform, right? Or a badge or whatever, big red truck, like we see all those things. Those are people, those are families, right? Those are lives behind all that. And it sounds to me like that's really the goal, is to let us focus on that.
Absolutely. Yep. We hope that happens. We've heard stories of people, buying tickets to take to their local precincts or their folks around them to just honor them. And that's the other thing overlaying this whole story, is that we honor these men and women during this week, during this time of first responders, just to take a moment. And I think it's a point where you'll hear that in the media, I'm sure. You'll see corporations that'll be giving away free meals, go to a Firehouse sub and get a sub or something like that. But it's a good time to intentionally do this, and I think a great time to release the movie, and so that's why we've done it where we've done it, and so it's going to be exciting to see in the next couple of days. We're in about 850 screens across America for the next 2 days. I don't think there's anything for me like being in a big theater environment and watching a movie with other people around us. But as you said earlier, the film will live way beyond this. With streaming, with every other market that'll be out there. So there'll be a lot of opportunity for many years to come to see first responders.
I love it. The website is firstrespondersmovie.com. That's where you can get all the info. You can find out where it's playing over the next few days. And then you can get more information as well after that. And guys, take some time this week, right, as we go through First Responders Week, especially with that focus on the 28th. And you're going to see someone in uniform. Just give them a quick thank you, right? Thinking about you. Hope you're having a good week. And just a word of thanks, right? We ask people to do a lot. And as a grandson of a cop who was a chief of police, right, it always meant something in our house. Always proud of that. And we just encourage you guys to do the same as well. Rick, it's been, man, just great to get to meet you, get to hear your story, and then hear about these stories you've had the pleasure of telling, man. We wish you nothing but the best.
Well, thank you. And thanks for helping us get the awareness out, letting your folks know that this is happening, and really appreciate being here.
Honored to do it. The movie is First Responders, the website, firstrespondersmovie.com. He's Rick Eldridge. I'm Brian Jodis. That's been this episode of Pick Up the Six Podcast.